So my lab's research is focused on population genomics. So we're interested in studying and understanding patterns of mutations within and between populations of almost any organism. So we want to understand, how does genetic variation arise? How does natural selection act on that genetic variation? And then we can use those insights to ask historical questions. So given the patterns of genetic variation we see today, for example in humans, what does that tell us about the past history of our species? And so projects we've worked on have focused on developing methods for understanding and extracting insight from that sort of data. For example, in humans, we developed some of the first estimates from genetics when humans left Africa and started to settle the Eurasian continent and then moved over into the New World. That sort of historical information is encoded in our genomes. Right now, what we're really interested in is patterns of natural selection. So looking at patterns of how mutations are distributed within and between populations, we want to understand how natural selection is acting on the genes in our cells. So most mutations are deleterious, they're bad for us. But some are really bad, some are not so bad. Some might be bad in one population and not so bad in another population. So we're developing computational methods to look at the genome data and understand, do these sorts of genes tend to have really strongly deleterious mutations, where in these sorts of genes, mutations aren't so bad, maybe because the environment is different or because there are just different pressures acting on those genes. And we're also interested in trying to understand that process over time. Were certain classes of genes really evolutionarily important, say 50,000 years ago, and now maybe selection is relaxed as, say, agriculture has grown and changed the external environment of humans. So not only in humans do we ask these questions, we also ask them in lots of different organisms, because we're interested in fundamental biological processes, and by comparing between different organisms that have different population sizes, different genome arrangements, we can understand how those forces govern the evolutionary process that eventually created all the organisms on Earth.